This week on Home and Away in Australia, as Tane and Jo finally give in to their feelings, can they keep their new romance from Lacey and David? Following months of will they/won't they, Tane and Jo have finally decided to give romance a go, but find themselves deciding to keep it a secret from Jo's family. After learning from Lacey that Jo and Tane were into each other, David was concerned when he found Tane's police record amongst a pile of suspended sentences awaiting their annual review at the station. Tane is currently serving a 7-year sentence via an intensive correction order, after he abducted baby Poppy last year. Despite being a task usually assigned to a junior officer, Sergeant David opted to undertake Tane's review personally, visiting the Parada house to quiz Tane on the conviction. Tane insisted he had nothing to hide, but when David asked if Jo knew about it, Tane shut the conversation down and gave David the basic info he needed for the update. Realizing it wouldn't be long before her father intervened, Tane met up with Jo and told her the truth about what happened with baby Poppy. Whilst Jo admitted that it certainly didn't look good on paper, being able to hear the whole story from Tane had at least given her the full picture. Although he went the wrong way about it, she can see that Tane only did it because he cared, and it wasn't going to be a deal-breaker for her. As Tane pulled Jo in for a hug, David pulled up in his car nearby, unimpressed by the intimate moment he was witnessing. Later confronted by David in the surf club, Tane told him that he'd now been honest with Jo about his past, but David still had his concerns. Pointing out how fragile Jo had been in the 2 years since her mother's death, and the various complications that Tane had in his life, David voiced his opinion that Jo deserves something simpler. David's words got Tane's mind working overtime, and when he met up with Jo for a drink again in Salt that evening, Jo was surprised when Tane suddenly went cold on her and made an excuse to leave. Jo followed him outside, demanding to know what was wrong, but all Tane could offer was that he needed time to think, leaving her no clearer on what had changed. When the two bumped into each other in the surf club the next morning, Tane apologized for the mixed signals. He still couldn't bring himself to tell her what David had said, however, and with no other explanation forthcoming, Jo told Tane that she was done. Jo eventually changed her mind and met again with Tane, who explained that he had been worried that he wasn't right for her, and thought he'd only stuff things up if things went further. Putting his concerns aside, Jo asked him outright, "Do you want this or not?" When Tane confirmed he did, Jo kissed him and suggested they take it somewhere more private. As Thursday's episodes came to a close, Tane and Jo had checked into a room at the Bay Motel, where things quickly began to heat up. Over time, I think Jo and Tane discover they actually have a lot of common ground, after both losing loved ones, Madison told TV Week. They have a past experience that bonds them and helps them understand each other better. This week, as the pair lie in bed basking in the afterglow, Jo asks Tane if they can keep things between them for now. Tane agrees, and assures her that no one needs to know. Whilst Tane is of course concerned about word getting back to David, he later explains to Cash that Jo is worried about how Jo's sister Lacey would react to her entering into a relationship, only weeks after her own boyfriend Theo was killed in a hit-and-run. She just doesn't want to rub it in Lacey's face right now, Tane explains. He also decides not to make things awkward between Jo and her dad, revealing to Cash that he won't be telling Jo about what David said about her deserving something simpler. But it seems their plan won't be as simple as they'd hoped. As a promo for this week's episode shows, it doesn't take long before Lacey starts to realize that something is amiss. Returning home late to the beach house, Jo scrambles for an excuse when Lacey asks where she's been, and claims to have been working late at the hospital. But shortly afterwards, Lacey is confused when she spots a message come in on Jo's phone, thanking her for booking at the Bay Motel and asking for feedback on her recent stay. The next day, Lacey watches Jo taking part in Tane's boot camp session, when Cash stops by on his morning run. Do they think they're not being obvious? Lacey comments as she looks over to Tane and Jo, the chemistry between them at an all-time high. "I don't know what you're talking about," Cash claims, in a not-too-subtle knowing way. "Yes, you do," Lacey immediately realizes. "Tell me what you know, and I'll tell you what I know." With Lacey seemingly onto their secret romance, how long will it be before David learns the truth about Tane and Jo? And more importantly, will he attempt to put a stop to it?